So I'm Gerd Leonhard. I'm speaking today to Jacqueline Weigel. She is in near Porto Alegre, Rio Grande del Sur state in Brazil, of course. Jacqueline is a good friend and futurist for quite some time. We've worked together on a few occasions in Brazil and otherwise. And we're having a conversation today about the future. Welcome, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Gerd. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me here. And I will start right to the point. Tell me about the good future, because we have a lot of people that are talking about the end thinking and the end of the world and the apocalyptic world. Tell me a little bit about the good future, please.
Yeah, this has been a topic of my work for 5 years, ever since COVID, really, and a little bit before COVID. And the idea is really quite simple. The fact is that a lot of people are thinking about the future as not good. And that is because of the obvious reasons: climate change and warfare and artificial intelligence and automation and bad politics. And so if you have a list that gets longer every day, that things aren't working. And a lot of people are seriously worried about the future, and they don't think that we can do the right thing and actually have a good future. And in Europe, for example, 70% of European younger people between 25 and 35, they say they won't have kids because the future is bad.
Yes. And young people have a lot of doubts about the future. And the first time I see young people talking about the end of the world, the end of humanity, and no hope.
Yeah, it's very sad in that, for example, in Brazil, there's been a great research the other day showing that essentially only 7% of Brazilians trust other people apart from family, and the trust in other people has declined a lot. I think Brazil is number one in the decline of trust. But we have it in Europe too, that people are saying that other people can't be trusted, and there's lots of autocrats and bad people and tyrants and greed and confusion, right? So right now it's a period of great confusion and extreme thinking, like we have in the US, in Germany with the election, in France, and a lot of confusion about a lot of things. So it's very important to, in my view, to describe, especially to younger people, the fact that we have essentially every scientific and technological possibility at our fingertips. We have all the science and tech we need. So we can use artificial intelligence to solve climate change, to solve cancer, to create more work, to build a green economy. These are all practical issues. So science and technology is great for practical things. And as we're seeing, we can be more effective. We can communicate globally. We can feed everybody. We can create new water. We may have nuclear fusion, which means that we have unlimited energy. We have lots of solutions. And Kevin Kelly from Wired magazine, he said the other day that we should be optimistic, not because we have less problems, but because we have a lot more solutions, more capacity. And that's true. The thing that's not happening is the other side of this, right? The practical part, science and tech, that's happening. But in terms of collaboration, global consciousness, working together, overcoming difficulties, and common sense and wisdom, that's declining. So our biggest problem is not that we don't have the possibilities, is that we use them for the wrong thing. So that's a big problem.
And you actually said that we can create hell or heaven with all those technology. I know that technology is a tool. How can we create heaven instead of hell?
Yeah, every technology is like this. You can watch 12 hours of television per day, and that's hell, and you're going to be a vegetable. But you can also use television to build democracy. And so that's like that with every tool. But when we have tools like genetic engineering, sooner or later, we can figure out what gene causes certain kinds of cancer. And we can try to mute the gene or to not have it become active or predict, right? And all this is all possible, right? And soon, too late for us and for probably, but in the next 10, 20 years, we can do that. And we can use genetic engineering to say, I want a super soldier. This is science fiction, but it is not unthinkable, right? So, and this is the thing about technology. If we don't use our wisdom and our collaboration and agreements, for example, on what is okay and what is not, then we end up with all of the side effects of technology. Like we invented oil and gas and coal, and that was great for industrial society, right? But now we're here with a world that's going to 4 degrees global warming, and 500 million people will be affected by climate refugees. And so we need to put more time into working together to make sure we use this all in good ways. So this is about policies, it's about consciousness, it's about a larger story than just buying the right technology or so.
For sure. In human history, we tend to be good in thinking and really consider we are not good on this in the long-term consideration. But apparently, when I think how I lived years ago and how I live now with ways, with technology, I can talk with you. You are in Switzerland, I'm in Brazil. What is the main turning point for humans? Because later I would like to talk about this for amazing world, people, planet, purpose, and prosperity. But what do you think is really the key message or the key point that we can change this to a better perspective?
I think we discussed it once when I was on the event in Rio de Janeiro with you. It's first we have to assume that humans are capable of good things. If we're assuming that humans are not capable and not willing and overall evil, then we're going to end. Then we're the dinosaur. We're just going to go away.
Science fiction become true.
Right. But I don't think that's true. I really believe that we are not sometimes looking forward enough. We're lazy sometimes, and we don't have enough imagination. But generally, when there is a real problem, we can collaborate. However, we're always waiting for the problem to show up. So like with COVID, we believed we had a problem when there were 2,000 dead people waiting for coming out of the hospital, okay? So like climate change, now we see floods, we see people dying in India, and we say, oh my God, it's real, right? And this we need to stop. We need to have the foresight to understand things before it hits us. And we're very bad at this. And I think this is because we have this fight or flight impetus, right? So we fight, but without a reason, we do nothing. And this is it's a big problem. And you can see that, for example, how they played out in Brazil. Over the years, everybody kept talking about Brazil being the future and Brazil being the hope of the entire continent and so on. And it could have happened, and it happened sometimes a little bit more than others, right? But there wasn't enough foresight to bring it together in a larger story, in a larger vision. And there was always great attempt going up and then catastrophe, right? Yes. And then back and forth. So this is one of those things when I think if we have a good agenda as to where we are going, then we can start working together to realize the agenda. For example, the green agenda and the sustainable energy agenda is a very big opportunity, not just a burden. It's the future, right? So I think really what is important is that we realize that our limitations in how far we've come, but also we don't give up on saying that other people are evil, or there are no good people, or generally people do the bad thing, or I think it's generally not true. And in history, we've seen over and over again that we can collaborate and we do actually do the right thing, but we make a lot of mistakes. So it's very hard to see that sometimes, to have hope.
We have this amazing experience here now in Brazil, in the south of Brazil, with all those floods and climate change catastrophes, and we knew it. And the government and the citizens, they don't do anything. So now, in the last 2 months, we are working together as citizens without waiting for anything or anywhere. And after the crisis, the people go back and is calling for who has the guilt, who is guilty, who will save us. So we have to stop this, because I see people working together to help each other and to build another thing better. Mm-hmm. So you are absolutely right. But I see sometimes it's not with intelligence or love, it's always through pain, as you said. We just make changes through pain.
Well, the interesting thing is like in Brazil is a very social country. Everybody likes to get together. You have big events. You have people. It's a group thing, right? It's not individualistic like other countries. Now and it's very humanistic as well, and that sometimes makes it more chaotic. So it's harder. It's harder to collaborate because the circumstances are difficult, right? So in a country like this, it requires great leadership skill to bring people onto the same page. And so it's very easy to bring people on the same page if you're conservative tyrant, because then you only have a very small agenda.
Yes.
And it's like, you're like really simplistic. And this is what happened in France now with the elections that's coming for Europe, and in Germany for the European elections, and of course in the US. So if you have a very simple agenda, then people don't have to think very much. They just, right? But the fact is, this is not going to be a simple undertaking. We're talking about complex changes in taxation, in who makes what, in social justice, and in everything. And this is all going to happen in the next 7 years. When you think about it, it's mind-boggling because we don't have a lot of time to fix the two most important things, climate and intelligent machines. Because intelligent machines basically will be with us at the capacity of all human brains in roughly 2030. So we have 6 years we have to figure out how we're going to respond to a world where our intelligent agents are doing the work.
Right? Do you think we are on this way? How can we be optimistic without being naive? All of us, citizens.
Yes, the Italian poet Gramsky has a great saying. He says, it's basically skepticism of the mind and optimism of the heart. Right? So we need to keep asking questions and say, no, that's unrealistic, or we need to be objective and skeptical and ask questions. At the same time, we should not give up optimism as to what is possible. And that is a little bit like the Indian Revolution with Gandhi, to where in the beginning of his movement, there were 2 or 3% of the population were believing that it's possible to be independent, 2 or 3%. And then this grew very quickly into a mass movement. And within 9 months, 80% of Indians said, we can be independent. And then it became independent. Right? So it's kind of like, I think, to start a movement about saying, okay, it is possible, and we're not so stupid. We do have the technology and the science to realize this. And this is a paradox, because when we look at most of the practical challenges of Brazil or any other country, energy, water, food, electricity, infrastructure, these are practical issues. We can solve them, right? But we can't solve them if we don't have the right policy, and we don't have the right taxation system, and we don't solve the structural problems behind it, right? So, and I think this is really what it's all about, what I call the good future, because when you define the good future, it's really quite simple. Most people think of the good future as having the right to work, to have family, to not die, to eat, to have civil rights, to be healthy. Simple stuff. We're not talking about having 2 or 3 cars or 5 houses. We're talking about simple stuff. And to be treated fairly, to be treated equally, that's the good future, right? And 98% of people want that. It's a very few people who don't want that, yeah? So when we think about how we can make that happen, is basically just looking at the possibilities and then putting policies in place. Like if we want the green future, we need to say goodbye to the dirty future. And that means we need to let go of subsidies to help people drive for less of the cost, and to drill off the coast of Brazil. We need to let go of these old-fashioned concepts, which is easier said than done because they make money, right?
Yeah, so it's always about money. And don't you think we need different leaders? Because in my experience in government and in companies, the leaders are still looking to the short time and to the money and to the results. And they worry about it, but not enough. So to create a good future, don't you think we need another kind of leaders in the world, all kinds, social, governmental, building in companies, another mindset of leadership? Okay, we can make money.
Yeah. Yeah, as always, it's not a black or white question, right? So it's not the question of no money or all the money. It's a question of at what time do you have what priority. So I understand that Lula wants the money from the oil. He can certainly use the money from the oil, but there are other considerations, right? So what I call people, planet, purpose, prosperity, you have to make a choice of each of those four. So today you have a project where you choose 10 for prosperity and then only 3 for the planet. But tomorrow it's 10 for the planet and 3 for prosperity. And you need to be able to differentiate a level of importance in overall terms, right? And there are certain things that you don't do. So, for example, companies that have a very bad rating on this scale would be like the Saudi Arabian oil company. So it would be 1 for the planet, 1 for people, 1 for purpose, but 10 for prosperity, right? And countries are like this. And I think that this is a choice that we make to see how we can get to that destination. And yes, it's complicated, but people understand visions. And Brazil is a country that has lots of visions about all kinds of things, right? I think it would be a great time now to realize this and to move beyond the simple definition of success. And it's quite clear, for example, in the case of Brazil, that Brazil has for a long time, in my view, tried to be a little bit the next America or the next, to be like America.
Yes.
It turns out it's not a good idea because A, you can't be like Americans. B, it's not good to be like Americans because it only worked for them and it doesn't work anymore. So it's an interesting lesson. To be like Americans is not a desirable thing. Not that Americans are bad, but it's not realistic. It's not a good idea. So to understand this sort of next level of capitalism, as Al Gore has said, sustainable capitalism, we need to let go of this old definition. And this goes back to Lula's beginning also of socialism, communism. All these things are completely irrelevant now because we need a new form of economics for the future. Yes. And these old words don't work. So some of the things that you do were maybe more socialistic, like we do in Europe, like healthcare, and other ones will be more capitalist, like open markets, free investment. You have to make a balance that fits the future, not the past. And this is really what is coming now.
What's the difference? I would like to talk about these 4 words: people, planet, purpose, and prosperity. But first of all, what is the difference about prosperity and profit?
Profit is about money, monetary gains. Prosperity can be the fact that I have a great, organized, safe life, but I'm not super rich. So, for example, people in Denmark or Finland have prosperity. But they're not rich. It's very hard to become rich in Denmark or in Finland because of the taxes. But people in America, if they think of themselves as being successful, they want to be rich, like really rich, not just prosperous. So it goes back to me to the Star Trek movie series, where the whole discussion about what's called the Star Trek economy, it's about prosperity, about prosperous. So we move forward, we gain, but within reason. Like in America, the average CEO in America makes 365x the amount of money than his executives. Okay? 365. And you could say, wouldn't it be enough if a CEO makes 20, 30, 50 times as much as their employees? But 365 times as much is obscene.
Yes.
And to me, prosperity would be if I work a lot, I'm very smart and successful, I can do really well, I can be 50x, but not 50,000x.
Yes.
And so I think this is really about prosperity in a larger sense, also social security, social safety, like this is a big topic in Brazil, of course. And the disparity between the very rich and the very poor that has been Brazil and India to a much larger degree in Brazil, that's been a major issue. How do you fix that? You need a different approach to the entire economy to fix that.
But I think the new generation of families, the very rich families, I see it in Brazil, they have another mindset. They think in prosperity more than have a lot of money for I don't know what. So I think the new generation has this new mindset and they are helping all those family offices we see in Rio de Janeiro with our friend Marina.
Absolutely.
The new generation, they have another mindset and they want to make profit with prosperity, but not
Yeah,
have
I
a
think
lot of
that,
money.
really what's happening is I think that we can see the baby boomers, the Gen X, like my age, our age, roughly, they are tuning out of the old way of running businesses. So sooner or later, our money goes to our next generation, and they're 30, 35, depending if you have kids or grandkids, or the money is shifting in the next 5 to 7 years. And these are younger people that are between 27 and 40 or so, and they are expecting different things from life. They like money also, but they want justice and they want purpose. They want to do something interesting. They don't want to ruin the world. Our generation, ruining the world was okay as long as we can come out the other end. It's like it's primarily about, we grew up in a world where those things were a Club of Rome thing, and that was interesting, but only to 1% of people. And now we're realizing that my generation has in the last 25 years generated 50% of global warming, all of it, right? 50%
Wow.
were generated in 25 years. And the top 10% of earners in each country generate 90% of all emissions, right?
Oh
So these are mind-boggling numbers. So now we're getting here, and our kids and the next generation, they're coming in and saying, this is not going to work. We're going to crash if we do this, right? And they're going to put the money in different places. They don't want to work for oil companies. They don't want to be a lawyer for a genetic engineering company that makes human robots. And they're wondering, like, what is the larger story? And do I really need to own this? Or how do I make a difference?
Yes. About this, I would like to talk about these 4 thirds: the people and the planet. But we need a purpose, we need prosperity, and we are now in this green transition. So when I think people seeing your video, it's so nice to hear. We have to care about people, we have to care about the planet, we have to have purpose to do things in life and in business. We can have prosperity. And how do you think the green transition will impact our lives and our business? And tell us a little bit about these 4 words.
Yeah. That the main thing about the Green Revolution is that it's no longer just about spending money or losing money on the Green Revolution. The Green Revolution is probably the biggest money-making ticket in the world, apart from artificial intelligence. Because really what's happening here is that we have technology now with solar and renewable energy, and then next generation nuclear, which is a big discussion, right? Nuclear fusion. We have the technology to reinvent how energy works. And if energy is plentiful, then we can make water by desalination. We can grow food. Like Brazil has 70% of Brazil is in the middle.
Yeah.
It's just empty. We can grow food there. We can, we can, if we had the water, right? And the energy. So basically that's all solvable. And the thing that's happening is people are realizing the costs are declining so quickly. For example, a solar panel is like 98% cheaper than 20 years ago. And the batteries used to be, I don't know how many reals, tens of thousands of dollars to buy a good battery for your house, a solar battery. That's now $5,000. And very soon will be $1,000. And your electric car will go 1,000 kilometers, right? So this is now a huge growth area. And basically all of the major investments and the big companies in the future will be either in climate technology or in artificial intelligence. And you could see that happening as trillions of dollars going into AI. But on the other part, we're going to solve the energy problem. In 10 years, we can be net zero. In 20 years, we can go back and fix the problem by using more technology. But this will only work if we take the money out from the oil and gas and the coal people. And if we unplug them, because we can't do both. And this is, of course, the irony is that we spend $6 trillion per year subsidizing oil and gas. Right? And that's right now the oil and gas companies make $2 billion profit every single day.
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Profit
Yes.
every day, right? And if we maintain this, that profit goes everywhere to buy votes and to buy support. And if we maintain this, then it's very hard to make that change. If we take the $6 trillion and we say, okay, we're going to drive down the subsidies, put the money towards green, we're building a new economy where the World Economic Forum says probably 100 million new jobs are generated in the green economy, especially in Brazil, because it's a country where it's big, it's populous, and it's warm. Right? So, of course,
But
that has been said.
do you see the executive people, the investors and the government, they are ready for this, to do this in the small time we have?
I think it's one of those, first very slowly, then all at once. It's like the Hemingway quote, right? So it's a gradual thing, right? First you see nothing because few people are moving, and then there's a trigger moment where people are realizing this is the biggest opportunity. I've been asleep, and boom, everybody's there, right? And this is a question of subsidies, it's a question of FESI, all of these things. Like in Germany, it's already 37% renewable energy. And the fact that Germany had to get off the Russian gas was a big disaster, but didn't really matter. It's working, right? Because they came up with alternatives. And so you have a reason to change, and they make the change. And so that's the biggest opportunity. Clearly, that's where you want to invest. That's where the state needs to put their resources in. Also rewilding nature, replanting things, fixing environmental problems, stopping pollution. It's not just energy, but for example, if you have smart cities and smart systems, you can avoid pollution. Right? And you can say things like they do in China now or in India. You can say, if you're in the city of Porto Alegre, you want to buy a motorcycle, it has to be electric. Those are the things you can't do, right? And then you make the electric stations very cheap. So people are very happy with electric motorcycles, like they do in India now, because otherwise at 5 a.m, 2 million people start their little gas-driven motorcycles. That kills everybody, right?
We are seeing the changes. I talked with Sohail, you knew it here in Rio de Janeiro, and he told me that in Brisbane, in Australia, there is no smoking people anymore, just some young people, and they have to smoke far away. 7 or 10 years ago, if I say something like in my city there in Brazil, all tobacco companies are here. No, this is an imaginary, it never happens. So now it's happened. So we are seeing this. The
thing about things happening or not is like this, and this is, I think, the world that we're currently in, is you don't think it can ever change because you only see very small changes. But when the right moment has been, then it's like the curve goes from this like exponential, right? So the exponential point is 4, the next step is 8, 16, 32. But if you're at 0.1, the exponential is 0.2. Or 0.4. It's nothing. You don't see it. But when you have a trigger point, boom, right? And I think we have reached a trigger point now. And we've also, like with artificial intelligence, it's the same thing. Been a topic for 50 years. But now we reach a trigger point to where that technology can generate and do things, is no longer stupid. And that creates completely different opportunities.
Yes, you talk about AI, and this is the subject this year. Every place I go, they just want to talk about AI. I have a question. How can we not be hostage of the big techs in the next years? Because I know you talk a lot about big techs, and some things are behind the scene in big techs, which seems so amazing. How can we live in a better world, in a good future, without being hostage of these big techs?
Yeah, the thing is that technology is one of those things where if technology becomes a public safety and security issue, like artificial intelligence, then it should not be subject to private companies deciding the future. Mm-hmm. So if we're building a machine that is generally intelligent or super intelligent, with the computing capacity of 1 billion brains and the potential to simulate human reasoning and agency, then this is not a private business issue. So if I build something that makes my software smarter and I can drive my car without looking at that, those are commercial issues. There are also public issues, but only very small. But these are also national security issues, and they are issues of the military, and so we should not leave those top level issues to private companies. And then we get this Manhattan Project thing, where basically they called together all of the scientists to respond to the threat from Germany, allegedly. And they built the bomb. They didn't want to use the bomb. None of the scientists wanted to use the bomb. And Oppenheimer didn't want to throw it on a city. He wanted to throw it in the ocean. But it's the politics that decided, right? And now we're talking already about a Manhattan Project for AI to make sure that America stays on top. And this is, of course, ridiculous, because in the end, we should not leave public welfare to individual companies like OpenAI.
Yes.
Because they're not just making business things. They're building humanoid robots, right?
Yes.
We're talking about robots that can act like Blade Runner,
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
And
Yes.
this is not science fiction. This is all here already. And so basically most people agree we may reach artificial general intelligence in the next 5 years. Okay, and that would have great consequences, some really good ones, but mostly bad ones, in that we can't live without it anymore because it would be running everything. And we would eventually, when we leave control to automated things, we eventually stop understanding how it works, and we can't unplug it. And then we become subject to their control, really. In the control. And so that's a very big topic. And I think I'm all for the free markets, but the free markets won't solve this, because in technology, the free markets have led to polarization. And like, Americans will never tackle technology regulation, because in America, technology is God. You don't regulate
absolutely.
God.
Yes, yes.
You know,
Yes,
and this is what we do in Europe, right?
And they will create superhumans. I have a panel now in Rio to See last week with two neuroscientists, and they told us that it will never happen for now, the merge, the human brain and AI, because we don't understand how human brain works. So Elon Musk has this experience. It doesn't work right now. And we have wearables, of course, but they told us that it's a lot of bullshit about AI. And the really danger is that what we not talk, autonomous weapons and a lot of other things, biological weapons, and this supremacy of some countries to control them.
The thing is that an AI does not have to be like a human to be a danger or a weapon. I think ultimately these machines are not at all like humans. They use the neural network concept and machine learning and so on, but they don't work like humans at all. But in the end, if we're building an alien intelligence, an intelligence that is on its own very strong, then at a certain point we risk being out of control, because we don't know how to judge them anymore.
Of course.
They have their own, they're so far ahead. For example, a lot of people are talking about that an artificial intelligence could also reinvent themselves by saying, okay, I have this weakness, I don't have a body, so I'm going to see if I can find a body. And when I have a body, I can make sure I have enough energy and so on. So it could be very quickly self-enforcing. And also it would leave us out of control, because just like we're dependent on the mobile phone now, this would be a level of dependency where you literally couldn't get out of bed without technology working.
Yes.
And let's say you have an artificially intelligent agent, like people are promoting. So with a mobile phone, that's our agent now. If it doesn't work, it's not so good, but we can make it work. If you have an intelligent agent, that's like getting up and calling your assistant, and she's not there. And you don't have your agenda, you don't have your plan, you don't know what to do, and it's like that. And so that could bring all kinds of issues. Also, in Brazil, for example, the biggest problem would be that only people like us could do it. And people who are, but the 50 million people who are on your $5 salary per day and who have a cheap mobile phone, they would be left out again. And they would end up they would be like in South Africa, 70% unemployment of kids. And that leads to crime, that leads to drug abuse, that leads to gangs, it leads to war in the end. And so these are all really complex issues that we have to think about when we think about what artificial intelligence could and should do And that's why I think we can't leave this topic just to private companies and say, because private companies, what they do is they say, okay, we roll this out, we sell all these things, and if there's negative side effects, then let the state worry about that, or somebody else. Somebody else will worry about it. It's like exactly what oil and gas companies did. They said, people want our oil, so we're going to sell the oil. If there is a side effect, somebody
it's
has
not
to clean
our
up.
problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we can't do that here because clearly, if we're going to have an entity, a digital super intelligence, we would become the second intelligence. And the second intelligence would be the best possible case is to be ignored. Yeah. So we would be like a domestic animal to the AI. And
yes.
I think there's many issues here that we need to look at in terms of safeguarding, but not discarding it, because there's no way that we cannot proceed with using technology.
Yes. I work a lot in Brazil with big companies, medium companies, and in the first time we are in companies working with the Foresight department, the small one. And what do you think is the main agenda for business this year and the next year?
Yeah, I think
business people.
Obviously there are two agendas, which is the obvious thing is like we need to get into the sustainability track and the green track as quickly as possible, because if we don't do that, it ruins our business. You can't have a business if the planet is dead, and if energy isn't working, if water isn't working, if people are poor, that's bad for business. So that's number one. And number two is to use intelligent systems and technology to the right effect to be better in business and to pursue a larger story. So to get away from this one-track thinking that says whatever increases profit is the right thing to do, because it's not like it's the wrong thing to do, but it's a mix with other things.
Yes.
And we already know that, except for that we tend to, if you have a choice between, say, 1 billion real revenues or 10 billion reals revenues, then you make the choice for the 10 billion. But the choice needs to be made wisely in consideration of the other factors. And this is very important, because the younger people are coming in and they will punish us if things go wrong. And they already are using their voting procedure, as we can see in Europe, to vote for extremists because they're worried. So this is very important that you declare that you're on the good future agenda.
Yes,
And
this is important. I read your book, Technology versus Humanity, and the question still is, what is humanity's role in times of technology? I see your trends. They are all happen. And for us, we work with transformation. We talk about the future to make things different in the present. What kind of tip or advice or teaching you can give us to have hope in the good future, really every day?
I think first
I have hope for this, but sometimes I see my team tired and okay, let's go.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's good to have examples of how things are working rather than only how they're not working, to give good examples on this. And also, I think it's always going to be a mixture of shock therapy and things to love. So having ideas, that presenting stuff like it is, to be honest about things. And that's very hard to do sometimes because it's shocking to people. And to say, okay, this is what's happening, but here are the things that come out of this. Because when you have a conflict, you have a window that you go through. I often say it's like therapy, right? You go to therapy only when you have a problem. You don't go to therapy if you don't have a problem. And most of the time, it's a big problem. So then when you go to therapy, then you find a little window or like an opportunity. Yeah? And if you go through that window, then a new world happens, right? If you don't go through that window, then you'll never know what, and then it crashes, right? And sometimes you go through a window, there's nothing there. But in generally speaking, this is a discovery process. Yeah? And so what we want to discover in business and in politics is what's on the other side of the misery. If we go through that, what is there that will make the next window? And we have to believe there's another window there. So It's the hope sometimes comes from showing examples, but also having a principle understanding that it is possible. And history tells us that it happens all the time. It's just we don't see it that way because we look at all the things that didn't happen.
And we help our clients to see what is in the other side and what is in the future. But they are so scared. They really choose business as usual because they feel comfortable. So after they see what is in the other side, it just take time.
I think that to choose business as usual is to choose certain demise. Because in a world where there is constantly changing factors, 10 or so mega shifts from virtuality to AI to nuclear fusion to quantum computing, you cannot possibly believe that you just repeat what you did last year. And so the secret is to take what currently works and generates money to prolong as much as you can without getting stuck on it, and then finding the next window, right? And using that as a ramp. And as Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Yeah? Knowledge is good, but imagination is what we need to make the future. And this is why I always say that the future isn't about tomorrow, because the future is in so many ways already here. We haven't paid attention, we haven't looked, and we need to start using that to build the future now. I think it was Barbara Hubbard, the futurist, who said that the future exists first in imagination, then in will, and then in reality. And not the other way around, right? So first we imagine it, then we build it.